This is the TheAndresSegovia Show.
The attacks on property rights are relentless here in California. Every election cycle, there is a proposition that takes direct aim at one of the last bastions of rights that we have as property owners here, called Costa-Hawkins, and the latest iteration of that is called the Justice for Renters Act, which I will be discussing on this episode. But also, we get some other form of proposition that will tax properties. Just a couple of cycles ago, there was the mansion tax that was not what it was said to be. A lot of people that voted for it totally regret it, and that's all by design, folks. And it's really hard to really stay up to date when we're working from sunrise to sundown, and sometimes even long into the night burning the midnight oil. Yours truly is one of them. That's why it's important that if you don't at least get involved, at least find out if there's a local apartment owners association. There are some that are region specific, other ones that are more statewide. On today's episode, I have the president of the Apartment Owners Association, Jeff Fowler. I invited him on to talk not just about the Justice for Renters Act, but also to talk about owners associations like his. What services do they provide? What value can property owners find by getting involved with a local association like his? So here's my conversation with the president of the Apartment Owners Association, Jeff Fowler. Jeff Fowler, thank you so much for coming on to the program. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Andres.
Well, I'm familiar with you. We met at the landlord conference, I think it was last year, Long Beach, and I've been following since I believe your father, Dan, right? He was the one that was the president of AOA before you.
Correct, yeah. So AOA's been around for over 40 years, and yeah, my father, Dan Fowler, he established that back then, and really it started when they were looking at instituting rent control here, enacting rent control here in the LA area. So he ran with Howard Jarvis and would set up events. He'd speak, Howard Jarvis, others would speak to try to rally property owners to fight rent control.
Yeah, and thank you for that history. And I'm glad you brought up Howard Jarvis, hopefully having Susan Shelley on the show again. We got some things to talk about for sure. Yeah. But before anything else, for those that are unfamiliar with the Apartment Owners Association, what is it doing today and how can interested individuals get involved?
Great, yeah. So a lot of people who own rental property, they are the people who tend to join with us. And basically we have the local forms that you need if you're a rental property owner. So the rental agreements, the different addendum that you need, if you need an eviction notice. So those are all forms that we have that are specific to your area. We cover the whole state. We did start here in Southern California. So that's the main reason, but we do have a property management advice hotline with 10 advisors that are there to answer questions. And then we also have software. So there's, picking the right tenant is so important. And so we oversee that ourselves. We have proprietary software for that, where you can verify their income. You can see if they have any criminal history or civil, what's the word? Anyway, the civil history that maybe misconduct. That's the word I'm looking for. Misconduct history. And we have a magazine. We have so many different things, a YouTube channel. And then, of course, we do the AOA $1 Million Trade Show once a year in Long Beach, once a year at the LA Convention Center. And that one's coming up on August 22nd. And actually, Susan Shelley, as you mentioned her, she will be there and she will be speaking.
Oh, great. She's got a speaking gig. Okay, excellent. So looking forward to that. And for anyone, usually these are done like 2 times a year, correct?
Right. So once a year in Long Beach, once a year in LA.
Yeah, and this upcoming one is Long Beach, August.
Correct, yeah. And in both of those events, they're pretty similar, but just there's over 20 speakers or 20 different seminars, I should say, at each of those. And we get over 150 different vendors. And so just meeting vendors, the ideas that you get, even just from that, let alone hearing from, experts in their field, like eviction attorneys or people who set up LLCs, tax experts, you name it. So those are always valuable seminars and help you stay ahead of the game, so to speak.
Yes, and they are very valuable. And as someone that's attended a few of these, just a little bit about myself, I'm in both the construction and the real estate field. And in real estate, I'm talking about sales and property management.
Moving.
So I've been a real estate broker now for at least 6 years, but in construction with the family business for at least 20. So I grew up in that, and I own property and I manage the family estate and such. And going to these seminars, and for people that are tuning in, just letting you know, this is a 1 day event. It's an all-day event. So it's not like they break it up throughout the week. So if you can make the time to go for 1 day off your management or work, and that's one of the good things, that you can just focus on that day. And
Yeah.
it's like a crash course of so many things that a lot of people don't even know. And that's what I find also sad, that even as someone that's been what I consider myself, I'm plugged into the pipeline. I do this for a hobby and to stay in the know.
Good.
When I went last year, I'm like, I remember seeing that bill. You mean it passed? And I'm talking to the vendors because they're there informing me of what's coming up. I'm like, oh my goodness, even I forgot about that. And I can't imagine the shock that it is for individuals that don't know anything that's going on. And meanwhile, the attacks on property rights it's just an onslaught all the time. And that's why I find this very, very valuable. And two things to note about the conference, folks. The popcorn is a must.
Love it.
Yeah, you'll smell it when you walk in. It's a must. Go get it. And secondly, if you only go there for one seminar, you got to go there for Dennis Block. There's a reason why they have to expand the area and a standing room only thereafter. And he sometimes stays a little longer than usual to answer people's questions.
Right.
Because, wow, the first time I heard him speak, and then every time I would go, I'm like, no wonder. People are here for him, it feels like. But it's definitely the must attend speaking moment for everybody. But check out everything, folks, just letting you know. And this information is on their website. It's issued in a ticker here, AOAUSA.com, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And, for everyone to understand, the popcorn, it's free.
Yes, the popcorn's free.
And admission is free. Like, there'll be a toy drive because there'll be we partner with local groups. And so I think can't remember who we're partnering with, but there'll be a toy drive for kids that don't get toys at Christmas time. I know this is in August, but that's what it'll be. And if you've never been an AOA member before in your life, you do have the opportunity to get a free 6-month membership. Mm-hmm. And that we don't even take credit card information on that. So it literally, there are 0 strings attached to it. We just want you to give us a try. And we hope that we can earn your business with it.
Yeah, and you definitely earned my company's business from it, because I did get the trial, and some of those forms did come in very handy at an opportune moment. That's all to say that I wish more people could get more involved. Landlords we are a dying breed, it feels, because we're being taken over by these large-scale commercial landlord companies that have strong lobbying in Sacramento. A lot of laws are favoring them. And meanwhile, the mom and pop shops, as we're so called, are being either priced out or sued out of state. That's why some it's not even worth it, and they're just leaving altogether. And it's a sad thing to see. To wrap up the whole thing about the conference, yeah, it is free to attend. Anybody that I think is just the parking fee or whatever, that's just the institution there, but it's the fact that everything is free is the reason why people should go. A crash course of information, and they give you this handy bag and a lot of different pamphlets and useful information, and by the end of the day you'll probably be carrying 2 bags with all the information you're carrying out of there. I like that you keep that board behind you, the Vote No on Proposition 10. For those that are familiar with my show, they know. But for those that aren't, can you explain what Proposition 10 was when it was first brought up?
Right, yeah. So what we're doing, the whole Justice for Renters ballot measure that we're coming against in this election that's coming up in November, it's to try to repeal Costa-Hawkins, which creates a cover, a protection for small property owners and really everybody, all rental property owners. And so back, it used to be Prop 10, then it was Prop 21, and we mass produced lawn signs and sent those out, and and then that just gave people a chance to put those up in their yard, start conversation. And it's so important to dialogue with owners and also with renters why this is so damaging to the housing industry and why it actually increases the cost or the price of or the amount of rent for everyone.
Yeah, and that's just it. And this is why I'm glad you brought it up at the very onset, that your father started AOA in response to the RSO being installed in Los Angeles.
Really?
And that's what I try to point to people. Say, if they keep proposing rent control, we already have these places where it's been tried before: Los Angeles, San Francisco, Santa Monica, just to name a few. Those are the older ones, but now we have a bunch of new cities after AB 1482, which will recap for some people, was passed. And it's just like, okay, the intent for rent control is to put a price cap on rent and keep rents affordable, at the same time reducing homelessness. It's had the opposite effect. For anybody that's unaware, Los Angeles is the homeless capital of the nation, not an exaggeration, and among the most expensive rents in the country. So why do we need to continuously double down on it? It never made any sense.
Sure.
And I try to educate people on that, and they keep missing it. And the thing about Prop 10, that was one of the bigger fights, I feel, the more recent ones, and it seems to be the same group that's always behind it. I forget the dude's name, but something Weinstein of the AIDS Foundation.
Right.
I'm like, what's that got to do with rent control? It's like,
Yeah,
housing.
that's a huge conglomerate of companies. Actually, they own there's pharmaceutical companies that are part of that generate incredible amounts of income, and so that foundation alone, last time I checked, had about 13 million in advertising
Oh my
dedicated,
goodness.
and for the industry, I think we were at like 3 million or something. So we haven't put the amount of funding into it, individual owners, but recently we've seen AOA owners really members really pick it up, and but yeah, we have a long way to go. We need to advertise a whole lot and help people understand just how detrimental it would be.
Yeah, and some people don't realize that and money is always a big factor in all this, but just how many different ways they come at us.
Sure.
This one, it looks like it's just the one so far on the ballot that's affecting property rights. In this case, targeting Costa-Hawkins, which would be the Justice for Renters Act. But when I think it was during Prop 10. I believe Proposition 19 was on that same ballot, if I'm not mistaken. If not, it was in the
21 and 19. It was the last 4 years ago.
Proposition 19 was kind of flying under the radar, and some people were definitely choosing to vote the wrong way because they didn't really know. So I started covering it even more, and which is why I'm glad that there's organizations like yours that at least on sometimes even 2 episodes a week on YouTube and Facebook, and live streams, by the way, where people can chime in. You're providing this service, and this is free for anybody. You don't have to be a member to go to Facebook and YouTube. Yeah, and that's why for anybody that finds value in it, which is why I encourage anybody to get a membership if they find a value in it. But that's where we find ourselves now, the Justice for Renters Act, which is basically Prop 10 all over again. And the state of what we're in since the last time, I do fear we're now in position to not be able to defeat this thing. And that is a concern. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to fight this thing. So all we can do is continue to, like you encouraged, engage with tenants and landlords and educate them on this so they can also educate your tenants. But what else can we do about this?
Yeah, I want to answer that question and remind me if I don't answer it. But I do want to say that similar legislation has been enacted in New York City 5 years ago. And property values there have dropped 34%. And 34% because basically one of the big things that happened is the whole vacancy control. So basically here and now, even though there's rent control, when a person leaves a unit, you can raise it back up to market rate. And what this would allow, local municipalities like County of LA, City of LA, Orange County, wherever you have crazy local officials that are really pro tenant, they're going to enact these things where you can't even get back up to market rate. So it really is devastating to the property value, and I just can't communicate that strongly enough. And not only when we say that, people just think, oh, that's for people who have a lot of units. I only have one ADU, or I only have one house. And actually, that's what you don't realize, is that Costa-Hawkins is protecting you right now, and you will be uncovered if this passes, meaning that you will fall under a rent control if the local municipality decides to do that. And there can be rent boards, and they could be determining what your rent is. And this all sounds totally crazy, but we're right on the doorstep of it. And so understand that, so that there's a motive to actually take some action. And that's the biggest one, I think, for people who own any kind of property, whether it's just you only own your house, or whether you do own rental property. Either way, property rights is something that should be protected. And, they really twisted this thing. They say housing is a human right. It's like, no, it's not a human right. It's a need. It's not a right. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing is we have the AOA Political Action Committee. And so every time that this has come up, we've just collected money and put it right into fighting it. I had a member ask me, they said, I'm going to give, but I'm just kind of curious, what's the admin fee on this? And basically, I thought about it. I'm like, there is no admin fee, because anyways, covering, they're covering the cost on the other thing. So basically, whatever it's costing to advertise, that's what it is. I'm not getting a piece of it. AOA doesn't get a slice of it. It's just 100% going to advertising. And that's for money that's given now and that will be spent in this election cycle. After the fact, we still have a political action committee. And what do we do with it? We have the trash lawsuit, and that is actually still in court. And we're looking for the judge on that is going to either certify that as a class action lawsuit or not, but that's coming up here really soon, and we'll see what happens there. So that's even still in play. We had a lawsuit against the county for COVID restrictions, and that was or rent eviction control, and so that was something where we were able to make them change their COVID moratorium. And we even got the attorney's fees back on that. And what did we do with that? That's going into advertising. So we're either bringing lawsuits to help protect property rights, or trying to defeat bad ideas like this one that's going to be on the ballot. And, so we do not have paid lobbyists, but we're just really putting the money either towards advertising or towards litigating. So.
Yeah, and I want to unpack that vacancy decontrol just a little bit. Yeah. That also applies to units that are modernized. Like if someone moves out, repairs need to be made, and let's say, I could get more income if I make improvements, new kitchen, new bathroom, and all that. And my understanding is, if the property owner does that, and there's a vacancy decontrol in the RSO, that they can't raise their rent. It still stays at what the previous person
And it's not just RSO. Everything becomes RSO, basically. So there's no more chance to increase the value of that property. And that's why the values go down. Because if you can't flip it, renovate it, when one tenant leaves, you can't go in and put in you can't make any upgrades that will increase the value for you. So really, not only does it wreck your industry, the construction industry, because there's no more remodels. That's gone for 50% of the housing in the city, right? So that's gone. Maybe they'll paint it and just repair the things that they have to. But yeah, people are going to get out of the business, and it creates zero housing. It actually just lowers the amount of investment that's coming into the housing market, and ultimately it dries up the supply.
Yeah, that's how we get slums. But in knowing that this is part of the Justice for Renters Act, have you seen these commercial construction companies, these commercial real estate firms also lining up to combat this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all well aware of how it's going to impact our local economy and communities. Like if small business is the backbone of communities, and when you tear them down, you're tearing down the community.
And I'm going to give a brief history for our audience here. This is what you would know. Proposition 10 was defeated at the ballot box by Californians in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And we resoundingly said no, that was supposed to be rent control in the entire state. The Sacramento legislator, in all their wisdom, said that we were wrong.
Yeah.
So they introduced Assembly Bill 1482,
right,
which was signed by Gavin Newsom October 2019 and went into effect in January 1st, 2020, right in time for COVID. If it was enough, why did the tenant activists immediately after 1482, which is known as the Tenant Protection Act, why did they immediately get to work on something like Justice for Renters Act? This thing's been in the works for the longest time. It's never enough. And the whole idea is to have the government take over of private property.
It's a socialist movement. It really is. And they want to completely control it and socialize housing. And where has that worked? And then they point to, let's have nonprofit housing, like nonprofits the savior. Well, look at Skid Row Trust. It was like the light, it was the beacon, and had been around for so long, and it ended up going bankrupt, and it's a total dumpster fire. And they were losing about $7,000 per unit on the 2,000 units that they did have. And they realized, oh my gosh, older buildings are hard to maintain. We're really losing it here. And so they started buying newer things. But I mean, it was ultimately a failure because they're paying prevailing wages to all of their employees. And what do you work for? Andres, you work for equity in the property.
Exactly.
You're working at such a substandard level, compared to prevailing wages. And then they have all these attorneys that they're paying for everything. Where's the money? That's where all the money's going. And then you look at how they're just in every way, it's so inefficient. And, what happened to Skid Row Trust will happen to most of these, because there's a lot of corruption there too. And those NGOs are putting money into the pockets of the candidates that push that stuff along. It's a corrupt ring, I believe. And the less government we have, the more efficient we're going to be, I believe.
No, and it's been proven over the years. We've had a lot of things being presented to us in the name of combating homelessness or making housing more affordable because the rent's too damn high, as they say. Yeah. And we use Los Angeles as a measuring stick for many people. It's like, look, it's not just you have rent control where it's a price cap, and you're dealing with the schedule where you're raising the rents that are determined by them, by the way, which however they figure this thing out, and they could put a rent freeze on it like they did during COVID, which lasted up until just recently. COVID was 4 years ago. But we couldn't raise our rents. We couldn't take any action on our property. We couldn't get rid of nuisance tenants. And we couldn't collect on any of the back pays. Take him to a small claims court. Yeah, but the amount's too high for small claims court. It's like, and now where are they? They're out in the wind. Who knows? And on top of that, you have to pay for the inspections. You have to pay for the registration fees to have your units there. And now there's a new one. I just got a letter about that. I think it's for county though. Something similar to what LA's doing. But the point is, you're paying also for attorneys to represent the tenants, and they go against you at the court of law, and you're paying for the trial, the lawyers and the judges to rule against you because it's a very rigged system against you, and you're funding your own destruction. Basically, there's really no recourse in LA, and now we're going to look at it at a statewide level. if it hasn't worked in decades, why would it work at a state level? I am concerned for the housing future here if we get Justice for Renters Act passed. And that's why people need to be more aware of it. And you said something that flies directly in the face of what this comment was left yesterday on my YouTube post that I did debunking the Justice for Renters Act. This individual says, yes, vote for the renters. These people own multiple properties to make you their profit. Like,
sounds like a good Marxist to me.
It's like, if 1482 was enough, we wouldn't see all these other cities enacting their own RSO, somehow competing to see who had the most strict one. And in the case of Pasadena, people voted for it. I do not understand. I think it was Measure H. Like, wait, you voluntarily voted for an RSO, whereas the city council was forcing it somewhere else? We really have a lot of ground to make up to educate people. But
people gotta get out and vote. You know, how many owners voted in Pasadena? You know, if they all turned out and voted, it wouldn't have happened.
More than likely, and had they been informed. Look, this past primary was the lowest turnout, one of the lowest turnouts we ever had for a primary in California. So when we have like 10% of the voting registered voters deciding for everyone in California, it's like, what's going on?
So, I don't know how much more time we have, but just want to invite people to join AOA. It's $97 a year. There is no per unit charge, so it's 97 straight, and you get a 100% money back guarantee. If you're not happy within the first year, you get that back. And also, you mentioned COVID rent debt. You can report that debt. You don't have to have a judgment. Even if your tenant has left, you can report that rent debt, get it put on their credit report, and at least hold them a little bit accountable, and maybe even get that money back. So that's a service that we have that I haven't talked about enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
Just to be part of the community. If you're a responsible member of the community, you need to be reporting the rent debt for sure, just so that the next guy, when they see that applicant's credit report, then they see, oh, wow, actually they have rent debt here, and then you can move on and pick a better candidate.
And isn't there an initiative to not allow us to even use credit checks anymore?
You know, I mean, that's what they would love to do. They'd love to completely blindfold you. They would love to do that. And they have really turned the lights off. This is something that I've shared multiple times already, but February 23rd, LA County removed the date of birth from criminal court records. So software, doesn't matter which software you're using, none of them can report a criminal record to you, like on an instant criminal report. Wow. And so we've partnered with an investigative firm. And so they're looking not only at the criminal, but they're also looking at that civil misconduct. And a lot of people don't even realize that elder abuse, stalking, domestic violence, all that is not in the criminal. It's actually in the civil misconduct. And it's so important to get a full story on people. But, you know, when you're looking at somebody as an applicant, you need the full story. And that can only be done if you get both the civil misconduct along with the criminal.
And just to clarify for those that are tuning in that might be interested in getting the service, this is a tenant screening software that AOA provides. That's right. Not property management software.
Right. We do have property management software too. So yeah.
Oh, and that's really good to know. And this stuff is on AOA that people can look at on the website.
On the main website, scroll down a little bit, you'll see an ad for it, and click on it, demo, and so we're trying to put it all together, make it easier for people.
Awesome. And for those of you that are tuning in through the video or the audio podcast, you already know the drill. Every reference mentioned here will be available in the show notes accompanying this episode at www.TheAndresSegovia.com. Jeff Fowler, president of the Apartment Owners Association. Don't hang up yet, but thank you so very much for being here on the Andres Segovia Show. Anytime some crazy legislation stuff comes up, I know that you guys are informing on AOA, but if you want to want me to help signal blast it, you can always email me and say, hey, Andres, this is coming on the pipeline. I want to make sure it's on your radar. Let me know, and I'll be sure to broadcast that too.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me on.
And that does it for this episode of The AndresSegovia Show. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay in the know wherever you might be watching this episode. Follow me across the socials at TheAndresSegovia on X, formerly known as Twitter, _AndresSegovia. Links and show notes are available on the website www.TheAndresSegovia.com, and real estate resources are available at www.segoviares.com. And that's it for this one. As always, I'll see you on the next one.